All right, welcome everybody. Our special guest today is Mr. Luke Mason with the National Park Service. I've got a series of questions I'm going to ask him, and then we're going to let some other folks ask you all kinds of questions and try to trip you up and all that kind of stuff. Just kind of a full disclosure, I had Luke was a student in our program at Eastern Kentucky University a few years ago. He took had several courses with me, and we went on several service learning trips and all that together as well. And I'm glad we've kept in touch, man. I really am. I really enjoy keeping up with your endeavors. And beyond that, I think you're a good dude. So I'm glad we kept in touch. Um,
Appreciate that.
I Hey, first introduce yourself and tell us what you do, where you're at, your title, and one interesting fact about you or something.
As Mike said, my name is Luke Mason. I work at Gayway National Park in St. Louis, Missouri. It's the big arch that you generally see pertaining to St. Louis. I'm a park guide, so I do primarily like interpretation for educational programming. So I work with the public as a frontline person there at the park. I'm generally the very first people you see when you go to the park.
So, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
So I'm originally from Jeffersontown, Kentucky. It's outside of Louisville. Some people call it J-Town, but I grew up here in J-Town. I'm actually here today because I'm getting new tires today. So
All
yes.
right. And then you graduated high school there?
Yeah, I went to high school in Louisville. I went to Louisville Male High School. It's where my dad went to. It's just school to go to, and sounds cheesy. I don't really care for high school too much, but man, it really helped me when I went to EKU.
Yeah.
Made college a lot easier. But yeah, originally from here in Louisville. Born in North Carolina, but grew up here in Louisville. But I've lived most of my adult life either in Eastern Kentucky or Tennessee or North Carolina.
Okay. And so you mentioned Eastern Kentucky University. Tell us what you studied there and some of the courses you took and projects you were involved with.
As Mike said, I studied recreation and park administration. My focus was natural resources and park management, and I did a minor in anthropology. Um, there were quite a few things I was involved in at EKU. I was involved in campus recreation adventure programs as a trip leader. So I took students and EKU staff out into outdoor settings like backpacking, caving, um, kayaking or canoeing, etc. Um, just helping students and folks get more acquainted with the outdoors in a safe way and respectful way. Um, Also worked as an RA for a while, so I was able to get students who are very fresh into dorm life into a, a safe and fun way of having fun outside of class. I also did work with folks in anthropology. I was involved with Dr. John Indonino with his archaeology courses. So I got really acquainted with that. Really spurred a lot of interest in certain areas that I do currently with the National Park Service and in the past with Tennessee State Parks. But I did a capstone on I think it was visitor opinions in regards to white nose syndrome in Tennessee. I can't quite remember the exact title of the cast, but it's a long one. But I was cataloging the exposure of folks, their knowledge in regards to what white nose syndrome is, and particularly like how they knew about it. I feel like social media or the radio or whatever, and then taking that data based upon who they were, where they're from, their experience, their education, and then cataloging it into a um, like spreadsheet to be cataloged for my capstone. So appreciate it. But yeah, so there's quite a few things I was involved in. Really glad that I went to EKU. Folks kind of teased me. They said, "Oh, you can get you can get into UK or U of L. I'm like, well, actually, EKU is the only school I applied to, and it's a school I wanted to go to. And frankly, if I had not gone to EKU, what I have today would be a lot different.
Yeah. What? So I know just because we went on a trip, or what? I don't know if you went on more than one, but I know at least one. You were involved in the alternative spring breaks as well.
Yeah,
So did
yeah,
you go to more than? I know we went. I know you went with one with me. Did you go with more than that?
yeah. I went to Nags Head area.
Hmm.
Remember that in North Carolina. Um, I'd say we had to go on another, but it's not ringing a bell. Some of those trips I kind of got mixed up with
Sure.
like EK adventure programs because we were everywhere. But yeah, that trip working for I think it was like a nature conservancy down there.
Hmm.
Man, that was a great trip. And also getting to experience like an oyster boil. That was a nice treat. But like
Remember
so
dipping those crab pots in the concrete mix and
yeah,
getting
that
them
was
all over.
awesome. Yeah, so like as Michael was saying, we got these old crab pots and we put them into like like a concrete slurry, and they would put these crab pots into back into the ocean, and basically be an artificial reef for wildlife. It's pretty brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really cool.
And then we saw several different lighthouses. Um,
Yeah.
and then we surely we stopped by the Wright Brothers Museum and Wright Brothers Park site, right?
Yeah, we did. We stopped by Wright Brothers there at Kitty Hawk and went to Cape Hatteras area. There are like about three Park Service sites there, there on the Outer Banks area. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that trip. Yeah.
With that, I know within the curriculum as well, there are several trips built in. Did you go to Jekyll Island with park management with us,
No, I didn't go to Jekyll Island. I don't
or we went out?
recall.
Sorry, not Jekyll Island. I'm getting mine mixed up now. Cumberland Island, where we
That's off the coast of Georgia, right?
yes.
Yeah, I didn't go to that. I can't recall what I was doing. I wanted to take it. It might have been a financial thing, but no, I didn't go.
Okay.
I didn't go to that trip.
And then, tell me about, because I know within the curriculum also that you had different work experiences, many internships and whatnot. Where did you do your different sites? Did you choose for that, and what did you do?
So yeah, as you're saying, I've worked at quite a collection of places. When I was getting like early on into the program, I worked for Louisville Metro Parks. Worked at Jefferson Memorial Forest outside of Fairdale, Kentucky. And last time I checked, it's still the largest metropolitan forested area we have in the country. Apparently, I'm not sure if that's still true or not, but that was like my very first like little taste of that. And then when I went up to EKU and I got more involved, I met a close friend of mine. His name is Park Greer. He's a former state park ranger in Tennessee. Um, he got me involved with the state parks, and I remember some advice that he gave me, among other folks. He said, when you have the time, especially in between semesters, especially in the summer, um, do as much field work that's relative to what you're doing as possible. And I did take that to heart. So from 2012, when I got out of high school, all the way to 2016, I was in some sort of field work. Either I was from fall or spring, but especially in the summer. So in 2014 and 15, I worked for Tennessee State Parks. I worked at Fort Loudon National Historic Site in Von Orr, Tennessee. It's an 18th century British fort that was constructed from 1756 to 1760. It's a phenomenal site. It's very pretty. Runs abreast to the Smoky Mountains. The next year, I worked at Red Clay State Historic Area. It's outside of Chattanooga. it was the seating capital of the Cherokee Nation for 2 years before removal to Indian Territory. But those places really kind of really figured out like what I wanted to do after my time at EKU. So just by kind of dumb luck, um, through Park, his partner Katie, she'd recommended I start looking into the National Park Service. And right across the state line into Alabama, there's a national monument called Russell Cave, and it's a very secluded, very pretty area. And that was my very first intro into seasonal work for the National Park Service. So from 2012 to 2016, I was in some sort of seasonal field work. And if I had not done that, um, what I have right now would have been, I'd say, a lot more difficult to get
Yeah.
into. Yeah.
So I also know that you're active in some various Native American, uh, or you were active in some different Native American groups and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your travels with that and what you've done?
Yeah. So due to work and personal interests and just making friends, I've worked pretty closely with the three affiliated uh, Cherokee tribes. They're all one people, but three separate tribes. There's the Eastern Band of Cherokeans, and and there's the two in Oklahoma. You have Cherokee Nation. Then you also have United Kituah Band of Cherokee Indians. Um, Most of the work I was doing with them was like relative to um, uh, working at Red Clay, considering Red Clay was a Cherokee site, um, in Fort Loudon, considering it was a site that was taken by the Cherokee. There's a lot of work that I did permanently like on the work side of things, but um, I did end up working for Cherokee Historical Association in the summer of 2017 when I came back from um, being out of the country for a brief period of time. That was very helpful for me to understanding some more of the contemporary side of things and not just seeing um, like I said, the past through modern eyes. Um, Really started to really understand like the issues and popular culture of viewing indigenous peoples. Um, so I was exposed heavily with language, music, um, dance. It was very helpful just to understand like the broader cultural aspects of the Eastern Band. Um, I wasn't pretty well immersed conversationally in the Eastern dialect. Besides English, that's probably the second or third best language I speak besides English. Um, but I utilize that now for like educational programming when it's like relative. It's like when someone like talks about like a certain county name or a town name, I'm like, well, I can probably tell the name of that town. But it's it's really helped me, especially with the broader aspects of things, working with Native communities. In 2018, I worked up in North Dakota at a place called Knife River Indian Villages National Historic Site. It's northwest of Bismarck. When the Lewis and Clark expedition was going up the Missouri and they wintered, that's where they picked up Sagagawea and her husband Tucson and Charbonneau. So they stayed with the Hidatsa there for the winter because North Dakota is very unforgiving when it's winter. It's very cold. Um, but I worked with the three affiliated tribes up there, the Hidatsa, the Mandan, and the Arikara, and a few other tribes in the area. But it was good to see just the vast differences between Native communities. Um, Linguistically and certain aspects like culturally, like Hidatsas are as different as compared to Cherokees as uh, people from Spain as they are from, I'd say, people from like Saudi Arabia. Very different, culturally and linguistically. Really helped me understand a lot more from a contemporary viewpoint. But But that's like in more in regards to here in the States. So I've worked pretty extensively with or for indigenous communities.
And then you worked for with or in the Daniel Boone National Forest for a short time. What did you do there?
Yeah, so I did. So in order to get my permanent status as a federal employee, it's kind of a big thing. I was trying to transfer back over to the National Park Service as a permanent employee. So I took up a position with the United States Forest Service out of the Daniel Boone National Forest, working for Job Corps out of Frenchburg. And I worked as a social services assistant. I worked primarily in the dorms. I was basically one of the very first basis of contact for the students there. It's a vocation training facility for those from the ages of 16 to 24. Um, some folks, when they hear about Job Corps, they think it sometimes through, I guess, a lens of negativity. Um, I've since learned that it's not the case at all. But to be honest, that was probably the most difficult job I've ever had in my life. It taught me a lot. Um, Working for Job Corps, I saw like, there's like serious issues with not just our education system, but certain aspects of, I guess, humanitarian priority for those who are in communities of opportunity. I don't like saying like like students or children at risk, but like students of opportunity because they can make things better for themselves. When they get there, um, we go through a line of questions. And one of the common things we ask is like, this is up to you to get through this program. And there's certain things we'd recommend that you stick through with, certain things you avoid, certain things you can and cannot do. And basically, it's helping them like getting experience with doing resumes, having a good schedule, eating properly, getting up at a proper time, taking care of themselves, making sure they're going to showers, washing their clothes, basically just normal routine things that they should have in order if they're going to be holding a job. So I was there, not necessarily like a counselor, but just to help mediate and direct them towards things to help them get through the program. Um, I was able to transfer from that site into where I'm currently at in St. Louis.
Well, that
But
was going to be my next question: is tell us where you're at and what you do
yeah,
now.
so yeah, I'm currently in St. Louis, Missouri. I work at Gayway National Park, as I said earlier. It's a giant stainless steel arch that you see when you cross over the Mississippi. Um, it is the second tallest man-made monument in the world. The tallest. We can have some fun later on if you want to guess the tallest, but it is the second tallest man-made monument in the world. Um, it was formerly Jefferson National Expansion Memorial. It's a long name, but they had a name change back in 2018, and Congress decided to change the name to Gateway Arch National Park. There are 423 units in total across the U.S. and territories. It is a very different type of National Park Service site. Before COVID, we were the second most visited urban national park service site in the whole country. Um, some days we'd have up to anywhere 10,000 people visit daily. Um, Before COVID, at the top of the arch, you're 630 feet up in the air in a giant steel structure. Sometimes I like to compare it to a giant carnival ride, but it's very unique. There's nothing quite like the arch. Um, to get to the top of the arch, it operates on a tram system. It's a combination of an elevator, an escalator, and a Ferris wheel. It's a 4 minute ride to the top. You get up top, you're up there for about 10 minutes to look west and east, and it's pretty spectacular. But what I do there is I'm basically your first line of like an educational personnel that you see. Give like impromptu programming to the visitors. If they have like general questions of while they're there, I'm just there to help them spur the curiosity or direct them to someone that may know better than I do. We have a 6-section museum that covers from the French colonial and ancient history of the site all the way up into relatively to the modern day of the construction of the arch. St. Louis has a immense amount of history. We cover anything from stuff that's like six to 8,000 years ago to stuff that happened in 2018. It's a lot of information, but it is if you like historical, intercultural related discussions, it's definitely a very interesting place.
So, as you think about, and thank you, it's always, and I know a lot about you personally, but it's always interesting to hear you talk and get to know you a little bit more. So, always take away little nuggets. So, something, for folks that are listening, that want to go into a similar career field, whether it be Forest Service or Park Service or whatnot, right? You're still relatively young in your career, but what kind of advice would you give to folks as they're going through their, academic preparation and professional preparation to start looking at that type of field professionally, right?
Yeah. So professionally, with the National Park Service or state parks, there are multiple avenues of way you can get into this line of work. You don't have to work in like a front line like position like what I'm doing. You can get into law enforcement. You can get into medical related things, either like wilderness EMT or search and rescue. You can get into administrative work, working primarily with like higher ups out of DC or with private organizations or with like the city, county, or state as like a liaison. You can work with grounds, maintenance crew. For bilingual, the National Park Service, I don't want to say throws jobs, but when it comes to seasonal postings across the whole country, you're quite marketable if you can speak more than one language. If you have any kind of heavy machinery training, CDL to operating forklift or something, that can also be used. There is so much what you can do in the National Park Service. Now, I will say this though, and I've said this to multiple people. Getting into the National Park Service, I generally ask, how badly do you want to work in this agency? So I started applying for National Park Service positions back in 2015. I got my first seasonal offer to me in April of 2016. I didn't get my permanent status with the federal government until December of 2019. It takes a long time. However, my case is different than others. My level of experience is different than others. The hiring officials, I know they look for things that I simply don't have. They really do. If you have any form of veterans preference, it's on a point system when you apply on USA Jobs. It goes through veterans preference, disability, and other things as well. And those are points that will give preference when it goes into the hiring process. And by law, that they have to take a certain amount of veterans when they're doing the certification for the application. Some positions, they only take a max of 30 people. So what I usually tell folks, and this is a little secret, and I've probably shared it with so many, and I'm maybe shooting myself in the foot, but that's all right. New positions on usajobs.gov, they post at midnight Eastern Standard Time. And generally what I do and others do as well, they apply right around that time because some of these positions are so competitive, they only allow 30 people to apply. And they'll close within 24 hours. But it's not always that difficult to get in. So I'm a GS5. Folks will start in as a GS2, 3, 4, 5. You'll do multiple different things. But with y'all who are currently still in school, there's a certain level of preference that is available to you, and it's called a student trainee position. And it's preference for those who are currently in or recently graduated from a university. I did not utilize that, and it took me longer because I did not. So, folks who are currently in school, whenever you go on USA Jobs, if something like this does interest you, student trainee. They do post them right now currently. I think I saw like one or two currently on USA Jobs. Um, I'm kind of rambling, but that's just me being honest with you. It is very, very competitive getting into this line of work.
And so you mentioned previously that you got into the Forest Service to get your full time status. Looking at other federal units, right? Whether it's BLM, Forest Service, uh, Indian Affairs, whatever it may be, right? That is similar or transferable. You see a lot of that as well, just beyond you, or other folks utilizing that same method.
Yeah, I've seen some folks do that. My coworker, Erin, she transferred from the Corps of Engineers, which was pretty a unique because they're even more competitive than Park Service. But it's folks who have like I don't know, like teaching certificates. There are certain places they'll seek you out based on your certifications or certain things that you already have. Um, some folks that they see, they're like, oh, hey, this guy's worked in the military. He seems to be pretty organized. Or this person's worked on an ambulance. Or this person's worked with youth. There are certain things different positions are looking for, just like any job.
Sure.
But going from one agency to the other, that is quite common. I've considered, and currently I'm considering transferring throughout different things. Um, and I'll get to that later on, but it is quite uh, normal in the National Park Service and just in federal service in general for folks to travel around, especially in the Park Service and the Forest Service. People move around quite a bit, especially if they don't have certain things like holding them down to a certain location. Um, I mean, my average of moving, I kid you not, from about past 8 years, I moved about every 4 to 6 months. That was normal.
Yeah. So we got a couple of questions, and some of these will touch on what you're kind of mentioning there. So I'll just go through these in the order in which they popped up. So, what caused you to want to move from the state to the national parks system? So you mentioned you worked for some state parks, and then
Mm-hmm.
you worked for Forest Service and Park Service. So what was it really some of the things that made you think that that was a good move, and what made you make that move?
So even like today, that's stuff I'm actually currently thinking about. So when I left Tennessee State Parks to go work for Russell Cave seasonally as a park guide, um, they had asked me when I got out of the when I graduated, they asked me if I wanted to go work for them. I said, well, I'll think about it. And they said, well, we'd like to send you off to the academy, the police academy. State parks, each state is different, the way they operate their state parks, and also what they do with their staffing, especially with their rangers. Not all rangers are law enforcement personnel. Me currently with the National Park Service, I am non-law enforcement personnel. At that time, I didn't want to go into law enforcement, so I started looking around and I found out like, hey, through the National Park Service, I do not have to do that. So I started looking into being the park guide at Russell Cave, and that's what I did. So that's basically the simplest reason why.
Sure.
But I wanted to experience a different agency. I've worked for private, state, federal, and tribal now, and I guess yes, like county metropolitan. But there's like all these different things that I've worked for, and there are good things amongst all of them. But on a current note, just due to like a common theme that I've ran into the past few years of where I see myself, say 10, 15, 20 years from now, um, that's being back in Tennessee. And I've been giving serious consideration. I'm probably applying for a position to do with the state parks. I'm considering going back to Tennessee State Parks. But I will say this: the National Park Service, as a permanent federal employee, your benefits are very good. They match your retirement 3% through your thrift savings plan. That's the requirement.
Yeah.
So it is pretty good. Job security is pretty solid. Downside of federal line of work, if you were a non-essential, um, if there is a federal government shutdown, you may be out of work for a period of time. You may be furloughed. But with state, state isn't adhere to federal government shutdowns.
Okay.
So there are pluses and there are advantages and disadvantages for every single agency that I've worked for.
Sure. So I'm gonna kind of the next couple of questions I've got are kind of related, but I'm gonna switch them here. So when you were working for the Forest Service and you were looking at Park Service jobs, what made you work? What made you think the Arch was the right move? And did you apply for other ones, or were you consider other positions?
So I was told by an old supervisor of mine, Keena Graham. She was my boss at Russell Cave. I asked her, I said, Keena, how can I make myself more marketable in this field? And she said, well, Luke, grand scheme, when it comes to your ability to be more marketable, um, they want to see that you can work in nearly any type of setting.
Okay.
I've worked out in the middle of nowhere, like in Stanton, North Dakota. I think I made 346 in that town in that summer. And now I'm living in one of the largest cities in the Midwest. Um, I took the job at Gayway National Park because that was my avenue back into the Park Service as a full time permanent employee. I wanted to have that urban park experience. Um, I have since gotten that. It's been a year and 4 months. Um, it has really shown me a lot that I did not know about urban National Park Service settings. Um, some folks will use the phrasing there is 423 national parks. They're all different. They're not all the same. They're all run in different ways. But there still is the common theme and goal. But it's I transferred because I wanted to have that different exposure. Still, my ultimate goal, um, if I do stay with the National Park Service, is either Great Smoky Mountains National Park in East Tennessee or Western North Carolina, or the Blue Ridge Parkway, which goes from Western North Carolina to western portion of Virginia. Um, However, just as I said earlier, I've been giving serious thought of going back to the state parks. Um, there's reasoning behind that, but um, uh, Tennessee is truly one of my favorite places in the whole world. But when it comes to the rigidity of certain positions where I'm at currently, I know like COVID has changed like a whole lot of stuff for everyone. So there's like not a whole lot that we can do just as a society right now. But I do miss the flexibility of Tennessee state parks.
Sure.
You can do a lot more. There's more responsibility, but you can do multiple things within your position.
So I know we've had you on here for a little over half an hour now, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Before we leave you, in general, is there any advice you have for future professionals in parks on a grand scheme?
What I'd recommend is if you are interested in getting into this line of work, definitely network, reach out to these sites. You can reach out to me. I can direct you to people that know better than I do. Um, the advertising in these positions, um, it's not exceptional. I don't say it's like very buddy buddy, but I really had to look for these jobs. As I said earlier, it is very competitive. If you're looking to get this lot of work, you have to work hard. You really do. Um, I know if there are ways I could have I've done things differently, like in the past. There might have been a few things that would have changed differently. I wish I'd done the student trainee option when I was still in school and recently graduated. Some folks, I mean, it's not super common. They go straight into permanent positions right after student training position. And I know some folks have done the seasonal thing for 10 years before they get permanent status.
Yeah.
But everyone's experience is different. There's 423 sites for the National Park Service. There's also multiple sites with the United States Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, et cetera. They're all across the country. It depends on if you can move. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
If you're able to move, that helps you a lot. But being acquainted with usajobs.gov, learning how to make a federal resume, they want to know every single thing that you have ever done when it comes to what you've done professionally. But as I said earlier, when you're still in school, getting as involved as you can in any kind of field-related work, that helped me exceptionally. It really did. I got involved in a lot of living history related programs, such like reenactments. I helped with getting those in order, with setting up tents, to water, to a lot of the behind the scenes related stuff, with outreach with the public, or just actually getting involved in the event itself and having fun. But there's a lot more to parks than a lot of folks do not see. It's there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that make it work, but every site's different. Every site is different. Each park is different, just like any other job. Park managers will run things differently. But I am considering going back to Tennessee State Parks, but it's coming to, I guess, the realization of making sure that you're doing what's best for yourself, especially in the long term. I know that when it comes to my long term, as I said earlier, I see myself going back to Tennessee. Smokies and Blue Ridge Parkway are in the top 10 probably most competitive parks in the whole system.
Yeah.
And I've kind of come to as an acceptance of this, the reality that like how much more time am I going to give towards this idea of actually getting to those two sides? How realistic is that possibility? So those are things that I'm still working on. This isn't a stagnant thing. So my recommendation is if you're truly working towards getting into this line of work, reach out to people who are currently into it, get their perspectives, have them look over a resume, have them give recommendations of like trainings. But as I said earlier, definitely look into the recent graduates student training positions because that will give you preference when it comes to hiring.
Awesome. Well, Luke, I'll let us close there. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about your professional endeavors and your preparation and all that. And again, it's awesome to see how well you've done and how much you've done. I'm pretty proud of you, to be honest.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
then overall, again, thank you, and do keep in touch. Don't be a stranger.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you later, Luke.
All right, later.
Bye.